So a couple of months ago now, I posted a video about the creation of the Marvel Comics character, the Incredible Hulk, and what I'd like to see Marvel and/or Universal do with the character in the future. I ended the video by declaring rather authoritatively that the version of the Hulk we saw in last year's Avengers Endgame film was not what many have chosen to call the Professor Hulk. For those of you interested in this subject, I've prepared this video. Okay, the first thing we need to do when discussing this is define what we are talking about. What is the Professor Hulk? Well, the Professor Hulk is actually a retcon of something called the Merged Hulk. The Merged Hulk debuted during writer Peter David's original 10-year run on the character. In order to understand what the Merged Hulk was, we have to go back to the beginning like we did with my last Hulk video. As stated in that video, Stan Lee's original intention for the Hulk was for him to be a gray-skinned, brutish character with a cynical side. Lee mentioned in interviews that the Hulk's original personality was supposed to be like a barroom biker who had had too many beers. Due to printing problems, the Hulk's skin eventually ended up being green rather than gray, and his personality was altered to be less like that of the Fantastic Four's Thing character. This Green Hulk's persona was basically that of a caveman, usually confused, and while still capable of speech, wasn't very articulate, sounding like a cross between Tonto, Tarzan, and Frankenstein's monster. Later, in the 80s, early in Peter David's run on the title, this original concept for the Hulk was brought back. While the Gray Hulk was physically smaller than the green version and less powerful on the onset, the Gray Hulk was more mature, somewhat more intelligent, and darker in terms of personality. He was more like the Punisher and Wolverine in that he rather enjoyed taking it to the bad guys as viciously and violently as the villains went after others. He was a bully's bully, so to speak. Transformations into this version of the Hulk occurred at night, as opposed to under the usual stress trigger that had been used for many years. While the Grey Hulk proved popular in his own right, many readers were still wanting the classic green version to return. After a couple of years, this happened. In probably one of the most crazy times in the character's publication history, when you bought a copy of The Incredible Hulk, you never knew really what you were going to get. During this brief time, Dr. Banner would turn into the Grey Hulk at night, but during the day, the good doctor could still turn into the classic green version if he was too stressed. During these stories, Peter David and artist Dale Keown would often go into Banner's mind and show the two Hulk personas grappling with each other, trying to determine which one of them would get to come out. By the way, this was nothing new. The comics had shown us the inside of the Hulk's mind for years, and the TV show did so also, particularly in the episode Married, in which Banner and the Hulk confronted each other in a dreamy desert-like setting. Okay, at this point we have to pause for a second and talk about another character sometimes featured in Hulk comics. This ridiculous-looking guy is Doc Samson. He's a psychiatrist with a nuclear biology minor, who often steps in to help the Banner character in the comics. He doesn't get along very well with the Hulk, but he does get along with Banner just fine. As you can probably tell by his green hair, he's gotten some gamma ray augmentation himself. While not as physically powerful as the Hulk, he can hold his own in fights with the Hulk, and on one occasion actually managed to render the Hulk unconscious with a lucky punch. Anyway, Doc Samson steps in, and with the help of an old Hulk villain called the Ringmaster, manages to provide a cure for the Hulk's condition. This cure, however, isn't like previous attempts to cure the Hulk. Samson's tactic isn't to eradicate the Hulk personas, but rather merge them. You see, at this time, when the story was printed, multiple personality disorder was still a thing, and hadn't yet been debunked. Today, a somewhat similar condition still exists in psychiatry called dissociative identity disorder, but back in the day it was still called MPD. Samson, with the help of the Ringmaster's hypnotic top hat gimmick, manages to cure Robert Bruce Banner of MPD by having the three personas, Bruce Banner, the Green Hulk, and the Grey Hulk, merge. Banner wakes up from the trance and begins a transformation into a version of the Hulk we had never seen before. This version, unofficially referred to by fans at the time as the Merged Hulk, was a perfect fusion of the three personas, possessing Banner's intellect and rationality, a bit of the Grey Hulk's dark side and dirty fighting tactics when necessary, and the Green Hulk's size and raw power. The merged Hulk was a well-rounded character and the creation of brilliant writing on the part of Peter David. This version could conduct scientific experiments in a lab and have intellectual conversations with the likes of Reed Richards and Tony Stark. He could also talk tough and enjoy schadenfreude like the Grey Hulk version, and when he got sufficiently enraged, would often talk like the classic Green version. These elements were not compartmentalized into different personas. He had moods like everybody else. It was refreshing and different, and he was just as powerful as he'd always ever been. Unfortunately, this was not to last, of course. This cure, like all previous cures, was eventually undone, and the Hulk, under the pen of writer Bruce Jones, became a mindless, speechless monster like the Lou Ferrigno TV version. Still later, writer Paul Jenkins and editor Tom Brevoort took over the title and tried to establish that the merged Hulk that we'd seen before was in fact not a merged version of the three main personas at all, but was instead a fourth personality that Doc Samson had unintentionally created. This new version was called the Professor, and fans were outraged. Jenkins and Brevoort created a new supporting character called Dr. Angela Lipscomb, who was based on Paul Jenkins's girlfriend at the time, and shoehorned her into the Hulk's history and continuity. Banner, Doc Samson, everybody knew who Angela Lipscomb was except for the readers who had read the comic for 40 years. She was the one who explained that this Professor Hulk was in fact Dr. Banner's ideal self and not a merger at all. The evidence she provided in the story, however, did not jive with what was established on panel. Fans took to the internet and painstakingly debunked every line this new retconned character provided with panel evidence. Eventually, the Professor Hulk was never mentioned again in the comics. If you are Googling this and you want to know how to differentiate between the original merged Hulk idea and the Professor Hulk retcon, the easiest way to tell them apart is this. While they're both green and they both wear untorn clothes, the Professor Hulk has a ponytail. The merged Hulk does not. Now, is the version we see in Endgame the Professor Hulk? No, not based on what we see in the film. The telltale moment is when the Endgame Hulk can't imitate his former version when they travel back in time to the Battle of New York. The Endgame Hulk most closely resembles an even earlier version than the merged Hulk that fans called back in the day the Banner Hulk. The Banner Hulk was an early attempt to cure the Hulk in which Banner's personality had the Hulk's body during Bill Mantelow's run on the character in the early 80s. This was not a popular version of the character because he couldn't get mad and didn't have the extra strength and power as a result, so Marvel did away with it. For those of you who are wondering or eagerly typing below, the merged Hulk did make a return of sorts in the stories Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, in which the character became a gladiator on another world and eventually leads a revolution, Spartacus style. Because the planet he was on was so hostile, the Banner and Hulk personas realigned and were more or less on the same page. This continued into the World War Hulk story, in which the Hulk returned to Earth, seeking revenge. The Anti-Trekker should be finishing up his video on the Incredible Hulk TV pilot soon. Once he puts it out, I'll probably do a reaction or a comparison video of some kind. Be on the lookout for that. If you'd like to help me make more videos, please consider buying a copy of my book, Captain Steel and Other Stories. It's speculative fiction, and if you like old-school Twilight Zone stories, I think you'll really enjoy it. Thanks for watching.